Over the course of the past few lessons, I've alluded to the idea that we can change the style of an element. And if you've read lesson 15 already, then you know that we can do that. There are actually two different ways that we can do that, and which way we choose really depends upon the needs that we have at that time. So we're going to start with the try it section, and instead of doing what's exactly within the text, we are going to deviate from that a little bit. We are going to start by using the style object and modify those CSS properties individually, and then we are going to see that that isn't the best way to modify style for this particular example, and we are going to change the CSS class of the element. So let's get started. I have already the basic HTML for this page. I have not added any of the JavaScript. So we have a div element here that just has some text. It has an ID of div message, and we are going to access this div element within our code. We will call get element by ID, and then these are the properties that we want to set for changing the style of this element. So first we will change each of these properties, and then we will change the actual class of this HTML element. Now notice that this div element does not have any style applied to it. That's because we are going to toggle between it having no style and having the style specified here. So we need to write a function called toggle style to do the toggling for us. And then the first thing we need to do inside of it is to get a reference to this div element. We're going to call this object div message, and we will call the get element by ID method to get that element. Now the next thing we need to do is determine if this div message element has any style applied to it, and we can do that by using the style property. Now the style property maps directly to the element's style attribute, and it's a common misconception that the style property accesses everything that is style related to that element. It doesn't. Only if this element has style set through the style attribute within the element here, or with the style property, can we only get style information using the style property. So we have three properties here that we could actually check for, and we are going to check for color. So let's do an if statement. We'll do div message style color. Now we're going to put a not here because we actually want to say if color is falsy. It's not going to be an actual true and false value. It's going to be falsy, because if color has not been set, then color is going to be an empty string. But if it has been set, then it's going to have navy. So we are going to use color as a truthy or falsy value, and we want to make sure that if it does not have a value, then we are going to set that value, div message style color equals navy. Now we have two other properties that we want to set, so let's add some lines of code here. Now we have this font weight property. Since we have a hyphen here, we cannot use this property as is, because a hyphen is an invalid character for an identifier, and in fact we can only use a hyphen in JavaScript code if it's contained within an actual string, or if it is being used as a minus sign in an operation. So the general rule of thumb with CSS properties that have a hyphen, and let's just copy this and paste this here, is to remove the hyphen and then camel case the first word after the hyphen. So we have font weight. And we can do the same thing for background color. We have this hyphen. We can get rid of the hyphen and make C uppercase. So we have set all three of these properties here. Of course, we need to give these the proper values. And now we just need to reverse this if this element already has style. So we will just set this to empty strings, and everything looks okay. The last thing that we need to do is we need to do something whenever we click this button, and we are going to use an event handler called onClick, and it's going to call toggle style. Now, events and event handlers are something that we are going to cover here very soon. In fact, lesson 16 in the text gives you a primer on events, and then starting with lesson 17, we're actually going to start with event handlers. So everything looks good. This should work as it is. So let's open it up in our browser, and we should see this change style. Here we go. And it's toggling in between having no style and then having blue text with a bold font and then a background color of gray. Now let's go back and look at our code here. We've actually written a lot of code to do that. Not only have we used 3 statements to set the color, font weight, and background color, but we have replicated these to reverse what we have done as far as setting the style. So that's a lot of code. And of course, if we were going to change more than just these 3 properties, our code would grow accordingly. So a better way is to actually set the class name, because we don't need to do any fine tuning here. We're not setting any position for this element or anything like that. We just are changing how this element looks. So we can use the class name property. To do that, the first thing we need to do is modify our condition within the if statement. We do not need to look at the style object anymore. In fact, we need to look at the class name property, and we want to compare it with the class that we have up here. So if class name is message-style1, then we want to remove the class name. So we will specify an empty string. Otherwise, we want to set the class name. So we will do .className, and we will set the class name. So instead of using many lines to do this, we are essentially just doing it with 2 lines. So we have cut out 4 lines of code. And of course, if we had multiple CSS properties here other than these 3, then we would cut out even more code. So let's go back to our browser, refresh the page, and whenever we click this button, we should see this element's style change. And there we go. Everything is working exactly as we had planned. So that's how we can use the style properties and the class name attribute to modify the style of an HTML element within our page. We are going to use this same concept later on within the next few lessons.